Hello, everyone. Just going to wait for Ashwini to kind of come on as well. And before she comes on, just welcome to another edition of Future Forward Sessions with upGrad and LBB. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had some interesting conversations so far. We've spoken about where music is going to kind of go in the future. We had conversations on how businesses are dealing with COVID and where that is going ahead. I'm really excited about today's conversation, primarily because the person we have on, which is Ashwini Asokan, the co-founder and CEO of Match310, is an expert at something which I think most people have questions around. Because when you talk about the future, you hear terms which go everything from automation to AI to data science to everything else. Most people mention those words. Not many really know what those mean or what they will actually do beyond the surface terms, and they're thrown around so loosely. So I thought it'd be a good time to take a deeper dive into this whole piece and speak about it. And so, hi Ashwini, hi, welcome to the session today.
Thanks, Varun. Happy to be here.
And firstly, I kind of want to start off with almost the brass tacks questions, right? Kind of in terms of what people kind of start off and say, I'm sure you go through this many times, and it's the most weird way to start this, but most people will turn around and say that when you say you work in data science, AI, automation, etc., what does that really mean? So if someone looking at a career at this, I know for a fact that that explanation is a general explanation most people have to give. So I thought I'll start with that, and then we'll go a little deeper into each of those aspects.
Sure. I think, is that a general question or is it very specific to me? And what does it mean for me to be working in this space? Which one is it?
Because both. You can take it either ways. I'm going to let it be fluid in that sense.
Okay, sure. So with me, I'll tell you a little bit of, I think the history will kind of help explain some of where I am right now.
Yeah.
I've always been in the arts, and I went on to do my undergrad in visual communication and multimedia. So always been in the creative spaces, design. Went on to do my grad school in the US in product design and design, basically. And then when I quit, almost all my peers at that time went into, working for Twitter design or, Google or the classic, right? Everybody went to SF to basically work for one of the as part of the design teams. And that was really where I got my breakthrough. I ended up meeting someone who was an anthropologist, and she was basically traveling the world, studying how people lived and appropriated technology into their life. Okay. And she was brought into Intel, a very unlikely company to bring someone like this in at that time. And we're talking early 2000s. To come in and set up shop to help them understand. And Intel was trying to become a platform company, right? Meaning they were moving from being chip only to, a much more up the stack, really.
Mm-hmm.
And there were lots of questions around, like, they didn't own the space, the ecosystem looked very different. And so they were asking a lot of questions around, okay, if we ended up building, most people don't know this, but Intel was the first company to put out an internet TV, a smart TV ever. The first Yahoo TVs, the first Google TVs all came out of Intel, and in partnerships with them. And I was part of those teams, right? And there was a very large group of product designers, of cultural anthropologists, of human behavior, people who studied human behavior, HCI folks, who worked alongside AI folks, hardware folks, silicon folks, software folks, right? An extremely eclectic and very multidisciplinary group of people who had been brought together to kind of build these businesses bottoms up, right? Smart TVs, smart tablets, smart phones, smart cars, all of this. And I think that's really where, I made my kind of jump from saying, okay, I'm a designer to I am somebody in the space of product. And if the product story, eventually I spent more than 10 years there. So, went into business, and then I started working with a lot of AI folks. I'm married to a neuroscientist, and, all of us had been speaking for at least 10 years about the future of technology, future of how people are going to be living with smart things in their lives. And it only became a matter of time. For me, it was almost like and it was very serendipitous, right? That all of these things came through. And I've never really looked at my career as a straight line. Excuse me. I always call careers is more, a parkour is kind of more of an analogy for me about, when I think about my own career and all the different jumps that I made. But I think automation, kind of the story of automation and AI is really about that. And I think most people, when they think automation and AI, they're thinking, oh, machine learning, and they're thinking, oh, I need to know how to code. And I think, of course, all of those things are really important, because these are people who are really building the AI and building the brains behind these systems that are smart. But I think my own journey was one around exploration of at least another 15 different types of disciplines that came together.
Yeah.
Really bring this story of automation and AI together. And I think today, you'll notice that much of my conversation revolves around the fact that when you say AI, when you say automation, there are so many people behind the scenes that are making this happen.
Yeah.
And it's a collective of all of that.
Yeah, you make a very relevant point, right? It's the fact that maybe I kind of blame the movies for this. Is that when we talk about AI, we talk about everything else. The perception is almost like so future forward in that sense of the word, that you're not thinking about how you're using it today and where you can actually use it. And what I at least tended to notice, especially in recent times as well, is that a lot of these tools or the ability to use automation and AI has been with us for a while now, right? It took, I mean, in many cases, took a pandemic to push us towards accelerating some of those aspects. It took business, I would say, challenges to kind of bring that in. So when you look at the overall landscape of the business world, or generally like how industries are functioning, what are the trends that you've kind of seen where both these pieces of kind of were almost like very early on, they kind of came in, but where have you seen the most acceleration, especially over recent times?
I would say, 2-3 areas where there's been a lot of really, I don't know if you guys have seen this meme, which says, did your CEO or CTO enable digital transformation? And then it cuts it out and it says, no, it was the pandemic that enabled the digital transformation, right? Yeah. It's been going around. And I think, a couple of places where we're seeing, a lot of places, I shouldn't say couple, I'm literally just jumping off a webinar where we were talking to the director of product at Dunzo and, the CEO of Starquick, which is Tata's grocery play. And we were talking to them about and I think every time you look at a legacy industry, and retail is a legacy industry. And I say that because it's been predominantly offline and in stores and in physical spaces. And this is an industry that's moving online, right? Yeah. So it's worth saying that, all of you guys can take a look at anyone that's mainly been offline and not digital, and people that are moving online. So any category of company or industries that fall into this segment, right, will clearly be people who are coming in to play with reference to any kind of use cases, whether it's automation related or AI related, right? So it's any kind of retail. You can talk grocery, you could talk fashion, you could talk, multiple different segments. So this is one. The second set of industries where we're seeing, so if legacy is one way to look at it, I think the other way to look at it is things like education, right? Very services related industries. And you guys are seeing right now, I feel like in India right now, I was just saying, feels like everything is about grocery or about online education right now, right? Yeah. Like that's what's going on, like no matter which channel you go to. And I think education is seeing a huge kind of change in adoption of tech and adoption of automation. We work with companies where we basically help them, you can take your camera and you can look at different types of problems and questions, and you can instantly find answers for them, right? Yeah. Using image recognition, using different types of text-based AI systems. And so people are thinking about automation at multiple levels. You don't have teachers today. You don't have access to teachers the same way today. Yeah. You don't have the same classroom set up today. And so there's a bit of an argument to be made about, as all of this goes online, does the curriculum stay the same? Does the process of learning stay the same? Yeah. Versus, can you actually fundamentally rethink the way people are thinking about education? Yeah. People are thinking about, what they're doing, how learning happens, right? And automation is playing a huge role over there, right? That's one example from a services perspective. The third place I would say is, and services, like I said, education is just one example. You can think about banking, finance related stuff is like going crazy there in terms of adoption of technology and automation of different services. Yeah. And then the last part of it is anything to do with manual work, right? All of a sudden there aren't, I'll give you a simple example here, which is, in the space of retail, there are entire companies that go outside to studios and they take pictures. Yeah. How do you do that today? Like, where are your models? Where are you? How are you going to do this physically? And so we've got AI that automatically generates different models so that you never ever need to like actually take another picture, right? Like physical picture. There's all kinds of ways to think about what's happening right now in the context of the pandemic, and the fact that so many of these jobs that were present in our physical space are actually not present anymore, and they can't be present, right? And I doubt that you're going to see people just suddenly roll back to normal 1.5 years later, once people are starting to come back to normal. So I think the third space to look for when it comes to automation is actually jobs that are very manual and that require physical presence. And if you take that away, automation's coming there as well. So broadly, I think 3 ways of looking at it.
The last point you made as well is so relevant, right? Because is that most times when people say let's automate this process, doesn't necessarily mean that the humans go out of it. You're taking away tasks which are generally stuff that could honestly be given to a machine, and you're keeping in simplest words, you're keeping the fun stuff or the more creative stuff that actually requires you to think of it in that sense, for humans, and I guess over time keep chipping away at that. But then when you look at it from that context, do you then see career trajectories change in terms of what kind of careers will be more relevant as we go ahead, which won't, and how do we kind of, like, if someone has said, okay, if you had to look at what are the careers that will really work, what will not work, there obviously is going to be, it's changing so quickly in that space.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And I can tell you that from just we are growing like crazy right now, even in my own company, right? And going out there and trying to find people in this space is just impossible right now. And I'll tell you why. And I'll talk about all these other types of adjacent skill sets. And I think some of your questions here are also about non-tech related questions, right?
Yeah.
And I'll start with about 4 or 5 different areas. One is on the product side. Okay. On the product side, I would say, I'm going to make a pretty kind of controversial statement here, in that I actually don't think India has enough product talent at all. And India also does not have enough design talent, right? And when I say product and design, I mean it in the context of user UI related design, UX related design, and not visual design. And the reason I say that is, building software systems is one thing. And I already think that from a product and a design perspective, we don't have enough people that are qualified to do that, because it's a very particular kind of thinking to learn how to build products.
Yeah.
Now, if you add AI and automation to the mix, I think it makes it that much harder, because one, regardless of what field you're in, you need to understand how AI systems work. Right? You need to understand that there is image recognition, there's text recognition, language recognition, there's voice recognition. There are different types of companies that play in this space. There are different use cases. There are different applications of this, and there are different ways in which these technologies work. Right? This is stuff you can read. You can really engage with. You can engage with like Siri, right? Or Alexa, or Google search, or your any place where you're taking a picture of something, and then automatically it's visually enhanced, or your Snapchat filters, right? Or your Insta filters. They all kind of fall into this realm in some way or the other. And I think the thing that happens when you think about product skill set or design skill set, product design skill set, you're talking about giving people people really getting this ability to understand, okay, how can I bring AI of some kind into a product that I have on hand, right? And why? More than anything else, and this is something that I've been saying easily for about 5 years now, that AI, like most new technologies out there in the world, is a technology looking for a problem to solve.
True.
And every new technology innovation works that way, right? So the question then becomes, as product people and design people, how do you train yourself to understand the relevance of AI in a given context, right? How do you use a piece of technology to solve a problem that you're noticing in a workflow, right? Somebody is taking some, let's just go back to that question of, or even right now, I was just coming off this conversation with the folks in grocery, and they were talking about, well, how do you know if the stuff is clean, right? Everybody's so worried about like just clean vegetables. How do you know if the quality of vegetables is coming in? Like it's good, right? Versus something that's rotten. And everything from image recognition to text-based stuff to there's so many ways, right? Yesterday, I was talking to someone who was telling me, they're getting so many customer support tickets, hundreds and hundreds of customer support tickets. And you don't have as many people to deal with it, right? So all of a sudden, if you have AI that can basically classify this and say, these are the most
Yeah.
important ones that you need to attend to now. These you don't. So really trying to understand AI and trying to understand application of AI and being, able to apply AI in a meaningful way, I think is a skill set that product and design people really need to find a way to hold. If you move away from that and into something like marketing, right? So much of marketing is about truly understanding and communicating the value of the product that you have, right?
So true.
And in finding the right people and delivering it to the right people so that those people show up where you want them to show up, right? So it's really about the product, the distribution, and the sales at the end of it, right? And enabling adoption. And so much of marketing related in the context of AI is about understand. Think of it this way: this category doesn't even exist. The company that I'm building is not even a category yet, right?
Yeah.
It's just getting started. It's super early days, and we are in the process of literally creating that category. In which case, the job of marketing is completely focused around education, awareness. Really helping people understand. Most of the execs that we work with across the globe, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when we started the company, we would go talk and they'd be like, what the hell is computer vision? What is image recognition? Right? And so just simply talking about your product makes no sense to anyone, right? Marketing is really about truly understanding the problem that people on the other side are facing and finding a way to make the technology actually shine or hide, right? In certain cases, you just want to hide the technology. You don't want the technology to be seen at all. You just want to do the job, right? And routinely, I find a lot of companies that come and say, I know these phones that are like AI and computer vision enabled, blah, blah, blah. Like, who cares? Like, nobody cares, right?
Those have become marketing terms now more than they have become in reality something that they're using.
Correct, right? And I think at the end of the day, people care about their pictures looking amazing. So if you're going to tell me that your pictures are going to look 10x more amazing than the next phone, I might be interested in exploring that. But you telling me you have AI in your phone, like, I don't care that you have AI in your phone, right? So I think there's so much around marketing that's about truly understanding all the capabilities of AI, reading up a lot about it, and then actually spending time working in companies, getting, I can tell you this, that most of the marketing folks and the product folks in our company have come through internships of some kind, right? They come and this is where you get to really live with the machine learning engineers. You get to live with the product people, the people that are selling this stuff, and you kind of really have to imbibe this, right? And figure out how this works. And so there's marketing and education centric disciplines. And then you have sales, right? Which is, again, at the end of the day's job, especially when it relates to anything sales related, is how are you going to really help convey that value proposition, right? And I think specifically in the context of AI, it's even more difficult because the more you go out there and tell people about your technology, they could care less. So you can't really sell much unless you truly are able to understand the value proposition and the value of the technology and what it can deliver. And in the B2B side, I could go on. You've got roles like customer success. You've got roles like, there's so many roles, I think, surrounding AI. And all these roles also exist in B2B and B2C. But when you bring AI into the mix, and that is your sole differentiation in some point, right? You all of a sudden get to a point where you go, okay, you know what? These are entire careers that you can build. And there are companies that are barely scratching the surface. I mean, the future of careers is here, right? And it's less about, no AI is going to eat your job when it comes to you saying stories as a marketer about AI, right? Like, these are not the spaces where the jobs are going away. Like being a product designer, being a program manager, being a these jobs are not going away anytime soon.
Yeah. So, if I just take from what you've been talking about, is the fact that most times we need to start using the term, my job involves AI, my job involves automation, the same way I say my job involves digital, because it is a part of every job right now, right? I mean, when you mention marketing, and that's something that we've been going through over the last year at my agency, has been the fact that we realized that we can use automation in so many distinct places. The fact that if a designer takes X amount of time, there are some parts of it like adaptations that could be automated, right? Which is something that the designer hates to do. It's literally coming up with versions of it. Or there is some other part of it that AI can get, okay, once you sort through the data to give you some insights, but then digging deeper is a person's job, not sorting out the data. So I think in each job role across functions, if you actually try to look at how it can play a part, it can actually make your life more efficient, make your work life a lot more focused and more specialized than more generic, more generalized in that sense. And I think that's really the core. I mean, at least from my limited focus on the marketing space, that's what I've honestly seen.
And it does come down to data, right? I think the story at the end, AI is nothing without data, right? Like all stories about AI are about data at the end of the day. And again, I'm looking at some of these questions here that are showing up on the right, saying, how does AI play in marketing? How does AI play in any? At the end of the day, it comes down to data. If you have if you have audience that you're basically targeting or segmenting and engaging with in some form, you basically want algorithms that are studying that data, that are grouping them the right way, that are giving them the right offers, that are showing them the right products, that are engaging with them on the right channel. All of this is stuff that AI can do today, right? And I think as marketers, it's less about AI taking over your job, but it's more about you learning to interact with systems that can do these things, right? And all of a sudden you're not just having, and think of it this way, with more and more, if you think about the industry, no matter which industry you go to, there's some extensive consolidation happening in the market. Okay. The smaller players, you're either seeing a lot of small guys, or you're seeing a lot of guys that are huge and large. Okay. The space in the middle, no matter which category you go to, is missing right now. Right. Which means on one hand, you have highly specific data about customers of all kinds, about process, about inventory, about all of that. On the other hand, you have large volumes of data that no human can sit and sift through, right? So it all comes down to data. Whether you're a product designer, marketer, the person building the product, the person coding, it doesn't matter. It all comes down to the data and your ability to kind of interact with the data.
Yeah. I think I'm just looking at some of the questions, and I think a lot of people even want to go down to the base level of where this kind of starts off, right? And at the simplest sense of the word is the fact that you are, like you mentioned, we have so much data around us. If humans had to sift through it, it's going to take years to run through all of it. A machine can run through it quickly and quickly learn from it, which is machine learning, and from there grow more and more intelligent. Hopefully not Terminator zone of things, which is some of everybody's point of reference when you talk about AI and this thing, or maybe I'm just that generation. But I think I want to take a couple of steps back and say that when you did set up your company, what were the core focuses? Because that's also a good place to start. If someone has a startup today and they want to focus on this space and say, okay, this is because you're a specialized company, and people want to specialize. If they want to specialize in this area, it'd be great to understand what the insight was and what you kind of started off with and where you've seen that expanding towards.
You just dropped off towards the end. Can you say that again?
Yeah, I'm just saying that I just want to understand that what are the insights for when you started off your company in terms of, okay, these are the focus areas. Why were those focus areas, and how have you seen those focuses kind of expand as you've gone ahead?
Yeah. So one of the first starting points. So we were a hardcore, AI software play when we began. We are fundamentally building a new platform, and that's kind of where we began our journey. All proprietary tech built in-house. We are a company that provides AI solutions and products to companies across the globe. And when we began from a business perspective, we doubled down on retail. And the reason we did that was because, again, legacy industry, huge opportunity. People are going from offline to online across different categories, regardless of whether it's, apparel, fashion, or it's grocery and the likes. There's a significant kind of movement that's happening of people, of goods, of processes from offline to online, right? And for us, it was really interesting watching that. And we knew that our strengths were in computer vision and NLP. And we had very specific areas, which when we began as interesting areas and also sources of strength for us. And we spent a lot of time really studying the industry, right? We did a lot of, and like any other company, you start off with an enterprise company, a B2B enterprise. So we start off working with one customer, and you really learn the nuances of, and they see you just, how good your tech is in the initial stages, and they say, okay, let's go experiment. And then you work with them for a couple of months, and then all of a sudden that product works. And for us, it was all about end-to-end customer experience focused products in the early days. So really using data, like we were talking about, customer data, inventory data, to basically help automate and give them the best customer experience, right? And then slowly we kind of expanded and said, okay, this can move into the inventory analysis side of things. In the warehouse, we can actually put our AI solutions to detect objects, to label objects, to create metadata about objects, and actually create a digital presence for them. And then we continue to expand our offerings into photo studios. So it's one of those classic things that any B2B, any kind of SaaS company, enterprise company does, is there's a constant solution and product expansion that happens, right? And which is basically us going in there, working very closely, which is why I say there's no kind of AI, there's no role to be had if you're not in the thick of it, if you are not in the middle of it, in a particular vertical, and you're not so domain, there's no AI without domain experience. So you've got to figure out, regardless of what career you want in AI, you really have to figure out what is that domain that you're going to be going and immersing yourself in. Because AI is literally the last step, if I may, right? There's first understanding the domain, and then there's all understanding the data surrounding the domain and all the workflows and everything associated with it. And then there is AI, right? So, and that's broadly the trajectory that we took at MSD as well.
A lot of people have been actually posting here, and some of the earlier questions also were about, if someone who doesn't come from a technical background, right? So you don't come from, you came in from the design end of things, but if someone is not from this end of things, if they want to kind of start off, what is a good place for them to kind of start and to get into this space?
When it comes back to it, right, it depends on your strength. I would say ask yourself, what kind of a background do you have? Do you have a product background? Then great, you can become a product designer or a product manager in AI, right? It's an extension. Do you come from a marketing background? If you do, then you can definitely create a career in AI, right? And focus on marketing. But so it largely, I would say the answer really is it's AI is not a thing, right? Like it's a large field. It's like it's like saying, hey, how can I get into B2C? You just pick the industry you like figure out what your strong suit is, right, in terms of your skill set. So I think the answer to where can I start my career in AI really comes down to who are you, what kind of skills do you have, and then how can you apply it in the context of AI, I guess is the question.
Another context in which data kind of comes in is especially when you talk about retail, you talk about how it's being used is a large point of conversation, right? Because data so freely shared was, at least till recent times, when the conversation around about privacy kind of came in. So especially in the field, what do you see are the general guardrails and stuff like that, which companies need to follow, or in generally if you're working in the space to kind of build those in?
Guardrails in the sense of what kind of a
just how you use data in terms of just to make sure that because there is a bit of a line between using data with a privacy filter on top, but also or just using data in general. And one of the questions that kind of came in was the fact that what is the best way to acquire it and use it while still almost like saying ethical usage of data in that sense? And what would, I just wanted a point of view on that, because a bunch of people send that question in as well. So
I think ethical AI is a big, it's a minefield, right? It's an absolute minefield. And there are some fantastic people in India who are doing just brilliant work in this space. Vidushi Marda, Chinmay Arun, Srinivas Kodali, like I can go on and on and on about the people in India who are doing just brilliant work, in ethical AI. And I think, where do I begin, right? It can't be exploitative, and it always is. AI is always exploitative because it's, at the end of the day, it's about who's in control of the AI. And it really is about who's in control of the AI, right? And the person who's building AI they're the ones that are going to do it in a way that they get the most out of it, which means like any kind of AI-based system is biased to begin with, right?
Yeah.
And so this is why one of the biggest mission, like at MSD and the company I run, is that we want to make every person out there an AI native, and we want to make every person out there a part of this AI economy, right? And the more people participate in the creation of AI, regardless of which background they come from, the lesser we're going to see these issues with, only one type of people being exploited by AI, right?
Yeah.
And so, if anything, I'd say it's really important for every one of you to really give it a serious think about what it means for you to kind of adopt that career, because I think we're really moving into the zone of being a hunter or being the hunted. And every one of us needs to figure out how to become AI literate precisely because of that reason.
Yeah. You made that point about that anybody who's building AI will obviously look at it from as broad stroke because that's what makes sense for it to be done. So would you almost say that the fact that you'll end up having companies which are building the AI, but you also have companies who are building the almost like the guardrails of sorts, saying that you kind of bring someone in to make sure they're making sure those things are managed when you're using it. So then companies, because the liability question has been increasing over time, and I think it's very important that it has. And at some point, that might also be like if you want to be a security expert in that sense, you want to be someone who's almost like an AI ethics role in that sense. So, and
and
these
I
are all
think
jobs of the future.
it's also on all of us, right? At some level, like every
Yeah.
one of us. And I think we're barely coping with not being biased as humans, leave alone by transferring that to our AI. So I think, yeah.
A couple of people also said that, the fact that, okay, if someone's interested in the space, but they've done a bunch of certification courses, have applied, haven't got called for an interview so
Why don't
far.
we take that? I can answer a lot of those things. Let's start. I'm just looking at this answer here going, is it advisable to make a jump from fashion to AI? Absolutely. We literally have easily 20-25 people in my company that we hired out of fashion design and NIFT and stuff, and they're all in AI right now. So the answer is yes, Simran. To you, right?
Any retail company which has an online presence in terms of sale and has fashion in it will need someone like that.
What are the skill sets you recommend from someone in a non-technical background, right? In order to move into data-driven marketing role, be a fantastic marketer. That is your step.
And then learn enough about how to use data.
That's right. That's exactly right. I think, like I mentioned, the start or the first step into any AI role at the end of the day really does come from just domain knowledge, right? Like you get your domain knowledge and then you kind of make it. Data science. Wow, a lot of people here want a career in data science. Guys, unfortunately, I'm going to have to say this, right? Like you are going to have to go through, either you're someone who's going to go out there and get a degree, and unfortunately, that's the best way for you to learn. The other way for you to learn is if you have a very strong background in engineering and in computer science and in coding, then you can learn a lot online, right? There aren't, there are hundreds of courses online and people learn, but excuse me, but I can tell you that people who have gone through undergrad and grad with a lot of rigorous training in these spaces generally tend to get better jobs. But if you are an engineer, I'll tell you that much. If you're an engineer or a computer scientist of some kind, then jump into a company that is dealing with some kind of AI and work and get a hands-on experience and then eventually shift, right? We've also seen that extensively in our company. We've seen a lot of really, really strong engineering candidates who kind of slowly migrate, right, over to, because at the end of the day, these are skill sets that you can pick up, and it's a way of thinking, and it's math, and it's statistics, and, there's no reason why you can't do that if you think you have the appetite for it. So there's broadly about
I also feel that all roles don't necessarily need you to go so deep into it. So if you still want to have to deal with data, a lot of roles will require you to use tools to be able to and many of those are a lot more at like, if you don't want to go do a degree, in my mind, like, that is the other option there, is that you can't go that deep, but every function is going to involve data science now anyway. So I don't see that that reducing for anyone. And I was also coming to that because of an earlier question which said, hi, Ashwini, Varun, how can a non-tech entrepreneur use data in the simplest form to improvise their products and services, especially to understand customer behavior, predict buying trends in fashion and the craft industry?
Okay, well, I'll start with the first thing, right? How can a non-tech entrepreneur kind of get in there? Again, it depends on what you want to do. I think it's unfortunate that I'm saying the same thing over and over again. AI is not a thing. You can't go learn AI unless you're somebody that's trying to actually get into machine learning and data science, and you want to use that which is very different. But if that's not your way and you're trying to do something else, the first question, of course, is what are you trying to do? Second thing is, what is your core skill set? Are you somebody, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a founder of some kind, is your core skill set around the domain knowledge? I keep coming down to that. You either have to be brilliant in retail if you're in retail, or go get that experience, right? Or if you're in online education, then you need to be someone who truly understands the education market and who's been working in it for a very long time, right? So there is a little bit of a go get domain experience and 1 or 2 years of solid experience, truly understanding, because there's no AI. AI has to sit on top of workflows. AI has to sit on top of a product that already exists. AI has to sit on top of, AI is an enabler, guys, right? It's not the thing, right? Unless, of course, like for us, it's the thing, but that's because we're building the AI itself, right? And our entire company revolves around that. But if not, if you're looking at it across as all other functions, then go get, a thorough look into the domain. Truly go and study, read up about AI and what all different kinds of things are going on in the world about AI, and start. I would say there's tons of reading material online, right? Keep up, and then you'll start seeing that as you're going through the motions of whatever role that you're playing in, either as a marketer or as a product person or somebody who's running a particular domain. You'll learn to adopt all these little things that are happening, right? If you're a marketer, you'll start saying, okay, all of this data is now available. Can I, automate all of these processes without ever having anyone touch any of these things? Or, can I use this data to understand, some fantastic stuff about my customers and target them in ways?
In addition to being a fashion slash graphic designer, to be someone who can switch into that kind of role.
You can, if you want to, you don't have to. It's as simple as that, right? So if I take a look at all the product designers, visual designers, marketers, all kinds of product people, all kinds of people that are running that are part of my company today, none of them had an AI background, but they do now, right? Which is they've come into the company and they've worked with products and they've really thought through, okay, this is how the user is going to be, working with this product. This is step 1, this is step 2, these are the use cases, this is the workflow. And along the way, you start understanding, okay, what is the technology I have? What does it do? What can it bring to the table? Can it actually help them do this one step 10 times better than they're doing it right now? So it's very in context with the work you do. So the answer is yes and no, depending on what you want. If you want to go out there and go learn how to code, you knock yourself out. I think there's a lot of places that offer that kind of education, and you should jump in there. But you don't have to. You don't have to learn how to code in a world where all kinds of software. It's no-code software is all the rage right now, right? It's all the rage right now in the world. So go learn and interact with these different types of no-code softwares that are out there, and maybe you can still build things. I think the focus still at the end of the day is building. You need to learn to be a builder. Build something, build anything, right? Like whether it's a piece of thing that you're designing, whether it's a piece of content, whether it's learn to build stuff. And I think you'll automatically figure out where your journeys are taking you. And if you have very specific questions as well, I can give you some answers.
Yeah. A little early on, you mentioned education, right, as being one of the areas that has seen the most growth in recent times, and also most change because of how education is even working right now. Especially with the fact that before it used to be a community activity, you'd have a group of people in a classroom and you'd be taught, and now we've gone to a one-on-one scenario. What do you see, just from your perspective, how do you see the almost like a one-on-one personalized form of education? How do you see that change, how education by itself happens?
Two kinds of changes that I'm seeing. And I think one, people are increasingly becoming self-taught. People can go anywhere and learn any skill, to be honest with you today, right? And they can figure out, I think everything is available to you. You can literally figure out how to go build a startup ground up to like 100 million. There's literature around that. There's nothing that's not been written about, right?
True.
So there are really no excuses for starting up anything, any kind of skill, any kind of thing you want to learn new. It's all available online. So I think self-guided learning is a huge thing, right, today. Second thing, and one that I am particularly a really big fan of, is the model of going and working in a company. Even if you're young, like we've had interns from like high school. We've had interns from first year college, second year college. And we're very open to it. And the reason we are is people are coming and they're absorbing, they're learning 3-6 months at a time. And we've even had people who are in their 30s, people who've come back from maternity leave, who've just come and said, you know what, I'm going to spend the next 3 to 6 months basically being a part of your team, doing this internship. and literally changing careers, like just switching careers in 6 months. It doesn't matter where your history is. It just matters that, you're good at what you do. You find a way to get in the door and you learn. And at the end of those 6 months, you're kind of at that point where you just you fit it into the company like seamlessly, right? We have I think like a 90% conversion rate for our interns right now in the company, right? So the whole idea of internships is to actually eventually place an offer and hire them anyway, right? And because once the company is investing in you, and I think that's the way to really look at it, right? If the company is investing in you to help you see the stuff, to help you see the product, to help you see the marketing data, all of this jazz, they don't want to start afresh and spend those same 3 to 6 months with someone else. It only makes sense for them to kind of continue with you. So I'd say one of the best ways to kind of jump is go get hands-on information and hands-on experience there. Don't shy away from that.
We have a very interesting question. Someone's from Shivani's from an aviation background. She's just got admission for a master's in AI at France. She's like, is it okay for me to switch from aviation to AI? I'm like, aviation includes AI now. You best of both. It's my response, but you give a deeper response.
Absolutely. I see no reason why that's not possible at all. To be honest with you, there's really no reason at all.
Every job has AI. Every job has automation.
Yeah, and I think even in if aviation is your thing, I think then you should just and if from a domain knowledge perspective, if that's something that you're really passionate about, then go work in an aviation company. Aviation companies are using AI. I can tell you this 100%. Like I know it, right? So again, yes, shift to AI, but for what? Like that is something you still have to answer, right, Shivani? Like regardless of where you're going, yes, you want to use AI, but AI has to be in some industry. So ask yourself, if you're an aviation background, then go talk to people in the aviation industry who are building these products, and go be a part of that and find a way to make a switch in there, right? And figure that out. So,
what I think is also important is that people who work in any career right now across the world, just getting those extra skill sets and figuring that specializing or rather understanding how AI, data science, automation, all of those pieces generally work. I mean, even from a broad strokes perspective, will anyway help their career, right? I mean, because no matter what you do, it is going to be a large part of your life going ahead. So if I was one of those people, what would you say that I should kind of focus on? At least have a broad strokes understanding. So then whatever I specialize in as my role, it gets further enhanced because I have an understanding of these pieces as well.
Wait, the question is, where do I begin? Is that the question?
Yeah, if I want to upskill myself and make sure that I'm future ready, no matter what role I'm doing, what are the basics that I definitely need to know from this entire space?
I would say first off, go do your homework on AI. What is AI? There are entire courses out there that are very accessible, right? If you are interested in product industry and in the line of product, there are fantastic product resources out there, right? Mind the Product is a community where all people in product basically go participate, right? And you can go there and you can learn a ton about what it means to build products, right? So again, I come down to step one is pick your background, pick your discipline, ask yourself, what are you good at? And then find the discipline that best suits that particular kind of a trajectory. And then from there, go on to saying, go learn those resources, like read up a lot of that stuff. And then from there, make a jump into AI, right? Because if you're interested in product, there's a lot of reading out there about AI and product. You're interested in marketing, there's a lot of reading out there about AI and marketing. And then there's a lot of reading just about AI itself. So just go learn about what kind of AI technologies are out there. What do they do? And there's people who are writing very simple stuff, right? Very simple stuff about AI, right? You've got to figure out these journalists. There are hundreds of journalists across the globe today who are writing about AI. Right? In very simple, in very easily absorbable forms, right? And it's important. You just need to be on top of all of this stuff if you eventually want to get a career in AI. And, serendipity is half of it, guys. Like not everybody, but serendipity is also, I'm a strong believer that serendipitous events happen when you let yourself run into those, right? Which means you need to be open to new experiences and reading up and constantly on top of stuff that's happening there. So I'd say just start there. Another way to start, which is completely the exact opposite of that, is go get some kind of an apprenticeship or an internship somewhere, right? Go pick the industry of your choice, just jump in there and just figure it out, learn, and you'll be surprised at how quickly you can get to a point in AI there.
Yeah. We have an interesting question, which is on data quality, right? Saying, can you comment on data quality and how to improve it? Are there any great hacks that you use in your company for focused on any industry?
No, we don't have a magic wand. What we do have is all of our products, right? This is precisely what we do at MSD. We build products to help improve data quality. And so there are no hacks. There is no hacks at all. No, I'm one of those people that believe hacks are for quacks. So I think it's interesting to try new things, experiment new things. You can call them hacks. That's fine. But I think, things like data quality require just a commitment. It is not something that you can play around with. It's not something that you can, imagine just making a call on data quality and losing millions of dollars on the other hand on somebody's business, right?
Yeah.
So I still think that, unfortunately for all of us, the people in AI bear an intense amount of responsibility, because anything you do wrong is going to have an effect, like 100%, right? Yeah. And this is it, like number of people being thrown in jail in the US who, their face recognition systems are not working, like, and you throw every other African American in, and that is people not being held responsible for, their data quality being crappy and their systems not working. So I don't think anything associated with data quality is about just, a quick hack. I think it's a systematic responsibility. It's work that people have to do to make sure that this works and this is right, because at the other end of it, anything that AI touches has far-reaching consequences, right, in any industry.
Yeah, I think also, what you mentioned about that you shouldn't focus on hacks is also because sometimes you take the shortcut, especially with data, then you are going to many times make mistakes, which will have just like a ripple effect that just becomes so much broader, right? One of my earliest examples, I think about 6-7 years ago, when we were trying to put out a campaign, it was supposed to be targeted to women of a certain age group in certain cities. And someone did a bit of a hack over there, and it was totally the wrong age group and the wrong cities, right? So all that money was spent. Thankfully, we weren't in charge of that part of it. But it's generally that because someone used a hack to make things faster. So use technology to make things faster, but don't use it to hack things, because that's exactly what will happen, right?
Yeah. I'm just scrolling up here and seeing.
I actually think Vidyasagar's question is very interesting. I'd love to hear if you scroll down.
Yeah, I just saw that. Vidyasagar says, he says, I'm a blind person. Can I become a DJ?
Of course you can.
Of course you can, but that's so much easier for us to say,
But I think now, especially now with technology, there is more chances for him to do that than you ever could. We just need to find the right technology, I guess.
Tell us, Vidyasagar, once you've figured it out. We would love to hear that.
Yeah. How have companies used AI correctly, especially during COVID? What have you seen accelerate during this time, and how people use this to kind of scale up?
Well, I can talk about a lot of companies. We are now working with a lot of industries, more than retail as well, right? And everybody is coming to AI right now, right? Whether it's help me target, whether it's simple things associated with customer experience targeting and help me find the right customers, help me deliver the right goods to the right people. Like I said, there's so much customer support queries coming in. Help me kind of classify and quantify which support queries are real, which one is fake, which one is priority, which one is not. Help me get AI that can generate models so that I never have to shoot, human models for clothing. This is a product we offer.
Yeah.
On the entertainment side, we're having people coming and telling us, help us understand, engagement. Who's engaging with what kind of content, right? And it's a combination of image recognition and video recognition. And we start to understand what kinds of content are there in an image, in a video, what kind of scenes are there, and we're trying to interpret intent. Why do people like certain types of videos over certain other types of videos? So AI has been playing pretty extensive role in anything associated with growing customers, growing a customer base. And then on the other hand, in terms of saving costs, right? So a lot of people want to do things a lot more efficient. And so they're deploying AI in ways to do things more efficiently. So broadly, I'd say any use cases associated with these two are great places to be in right now.
Yeah. Especially with how like retail has scaled up, right? Obviously, there's been this entire e-commerce, growth piece that's happened over the years in India, but especially during the last couple of months, I'd say the last mile of many people who even stayed away from, like, I don't think grocery saw as much growth as we have seen the last couple of months, especially with online purchasing. You spoke about how do you figure if something is fresh or something is new. Do you see almost a seamless flow of from manufacturing to warehousing to when you get customer facing? Do you see that as being a seamless flow? Because at some point you go from being something that is within the manufacturing part to becoming something that's customer facing. They've been working in silos in many cases. Do you see that almost becoming a seamless flow of things?
Not yet, right? And that is literally what our guest spoke about today, an hour ago today.
Yeah.
No, they're not. And that is the opportunity for AI, right? At the end of the day, I think the story is none of these things have been automated. None of these workflows have been connected. People are all working in their own kind of specific little silos, whether it's merchandising or assortment planning or, marketing or whatever it is, right? And remember that at the end of the day, a data that a company owns is on a trajectory. It starts with the minute that you have to order something and plan for something, and then on the other end of it, you sell something to someone, and there's the customer experience associated with this, and then you measure whether they come back or not. So there's a whole trajectory associated with data for a business, right? And then it comes down to data surrounding your employees, data surrounding your business productivity. There's so much going on in a company, and 100% of companies, I don't even think we can say 99, 100% of companies have not unified this. And this is why every time someone talks to me, I say, this is not even day zero for AI, right? So there is no better time than now to begin to pick any one of these places to go jump into, right? And to just because even if you go out there and get a hands-on education in whatever or experience in whatever business or whatever field you're getting, it is still before day zero. So you still have like a good 3 years, 4 years of experience that you can gain before getting ready, right? And businesses are already starting to invest. They're investing pretty extensively right now, right? So when you're talking about AI on scale in a few years, you're going to be ready, right?
When you look at career, if you had to just kind of focus on careers of future, if I'm someone who wants to be future forward moving ahead, what do you see careers that I should definitely look at, and which careers will not get affected at all by AI and automation? I think that's one of the questions that kind of came in as well. I mean, what would your pointers be on that as we start coming towards the end of today's session?
Yeah, I would say, like I said, think of it as categories, guys. That's very helpful. Categories that have been legacy industries, companies that have never really seen a lot of change, that have been offline predominantly, are great places to go and watch them and push them towards change, because change is coming there. Second is services. There's a lot of stuff happening in services, so that's an area. And I think I spoke about a third area at some point. I'm trying to remember. In the beginning of this session, I spoke about a third one as well. But I think, everywhere AI is touching everything: finance, insurance, education, payments, shopping. It doesn't matter where you go. Like, AI is touching everything right now, right? But it's just starting to. So I'd say, places where I would say it's a great time to go and work for startups. I really do think this. Manual work. Thanks, Shaurya. It's been a long day, guys. But I think, in terms of companies themselves, I think it's a great time to go work in startups. I am biased. I'm 100% biased. Of course, I'm biased. But I can tell you that these are the places where they're exploring new kinds of work, right? These are the kinds of places where companies are rethinking, or if you're interested in going and working for, companies like, I'll give you examples of legacy companies, like people who have been around for a very long, like Tata Group, right? People won't even think about, but these guys are doing some insane innovation out there, and they have some fantastic new digital teams out there. You can think, so there are lots of companies out there that are slowly sitting up and going, they're going to have to figure out digital transformation of some kind.
Yeah.
But I'd say it's a great, if you are looking for change, go be a part of a company that's actually doing something looking forward, right? And if the answer is nobody's, I saw somewhere in one of these comments, someone saying, oh yeah, but people are not really accepting my resume. Well, it all comes down to the domain, right? So there are two ways to get domain expertise. You're either a domain expertise in one of these things, right? Whatever it is, whether it's in engineering, whether it's in data science, marketing, product, whatever it is, you're a kind of a domain expert to begin with. An alternate way to go get experience is exactly what we've been doing with all our interns. Go find an internship across these companies and go learn on the job. I think apprenticeship and internships are such underutilized. It's magic. Magic happens. I can tell you, some of our best people in the company today came into the company through internships. So push your way. Don't take no for an answer. Tell them you'll work for. Tell them you pay me next to whatever an intern's job. But you want to learn how to do this, and you will come and do this with them, and you'll be surprised in like 3 to 6 months, you're going to start seeing a significant change here in terms of how people actually work with you and the opportunities you have.
I think I saw the last question, right? So, yeah, Vishal, you can write into me, although I'll have to figure with HR and figure that one out for me, but you can just write into me. I'm just varun.duggirala@theglitch.com. Just write into me and I'll connect you to HR. This is a nice place to find me and say, okay, apply to it. But yes, so thanks a ton, Ashwini. I think that we went broad strokes, we went specific, we went into all areas of things. But thanks for giving your perspective and also giving us pointed focus, almost an understanding in, I would say, in a short time about a lot of things. And thanks so much for being on Future Forward Sessions.
Absolutely. My pleasure, guys. And those questions were really interesting, guys. So thanks for taking the time.
And yeah, so that's it. That's what we have today. If you guys do want to upskill yourself, you guys want to become specialists in certain areas, head to the upGrad website. There are a bunch of great courses you can kind of take across data science, a bunch of the stuff we've spoken about today, and other areas as well. Figure which area you want to specialize in, move towards that. And we'll see you again next Thursday with a new set of guests. And we're still talking about how we can be future forward. And we're doing this with upGrad and LBB. So thanks, and we'll see you next week.